You had everything, not as a figure of speech, actually everything: the house, the career, the family, the specific, comfortable weight of a life that had worked out the way lives are supposed to work out. And then, in the space of an arrest, a trial, and a sentencing hearing, it was gone. Not gone. Suspended. But what awaits on the other side is so different from what you left that the word suspended barely covers it. What you are about to face is not one experience. It is a series of environments, each with its own hierarchy, its own rules, its own specific set of ways that someone who has never been inside can get hurt. And each one strips something away that you did not know you had until the moment it was taken. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly what the transition from civilian life into the US prison system looks like. From the first hours after arrest through every level of incarceration. What the research and documented accounts say about the specific shocks, the specific dangers, and the specific realities that no one tells you before you walk through the door. The first environment is the county jail. You are not yet convicted. You have been arrested, processed, and placed in the county jail while your case moves through the courts. In the American system, this period can last days. It can last years. The county jail is not a prison. It is a holding environment, typically overcrowded, chronically underfunded, and designed for short-term detention rather than long-term housing. For someone arriving from a comfortable life, the physical shock is immediate. The cell, the bunk, the noise. A constant, institutional noise that has no equivalent in ordinary life, produced by metal doors, intercom systems, and the proximity of dozens of people in a space designed for far fewer. The smell. Former inmates consistently describe this as one of the most disorienting elements of initial incarceration. A specific institutional smell composed of industrial cleaning products, poor ventilation, and the proximity of many bodies in a confined space. What the research on pretrial detention documents most consistently is the psychological impact of uncertainty. You do not know how long you will be here. You do not know what your sentence will be. You are in a state of extended limbo that criminal justice researchers have documented as producing specific and measurable psychological harm. Anxiety, depression, and the particular distress of having no control over the timeline of your own life. The innocent experience this. The guilty experience this. The distinction does not change the nature of the environment. For someone arriving from a life of comfort and status, the social dynamics of the county jail produce a specific additional shock. Status. The professional title, the social connections, the income level that organize the outside world, means nothing here. What organizes the social world of the county jail is a different system entirely, one based on willingness to defend yourself, on existing affiliations, on the specific social intelligence required to navigate an environment where most of the people around you have more experience with this world than you do. The person who was a senior executive yesterday is a fish today. That term, used by inmates to describe new arrivals, captures something precise: the disorientation, the visibility, the specific vulnerability of someone who does not know the rules of the environment they have just entered. Sentencing. If convicted, you move from the county jail to the designation process, the federal or state system's assessment of where you will serve your sentence. For a first-time, non-violent offender from a privileged background, the placement may be a minimum security facility. What the federal system calls a camp, the minimum security federal prison camp, is the closest thing the American carceral system has to the environment that journalists and former inmates often describe as almost bearable. There are no perimeter walls in many camps. There are rules, schedules, and restrictions, but the physical environment is less violent and less immediately dangerous than higher security facilities. Former white-collar inmates, the executives, the politicians, the financial professionals who make up a significant portion of the minimum security federal population, have described camps as surreal. The combination of mundane institutional life with the specific social composition of the population produces an environment unlike anything else in the American prison system. But even in the camp, the realities of incarceration are present and unavoidable. The loss of autonomy is total. Every movement, every meal, every hour of every day is structured by the institution. The person who ran their own schedule managed their own time, and made their own decisions down to the smallest detail finds that none of those decisions are theirs to make anymore. The loss of privacy is near total. There is no space that is fully yours. Your mail is read. Your calls are recorded. Your living area can be searched at any time without notice. And the loss of role is perhaps the most psychologically disorienting. The identity that was built across a career, the title, the expertise, the specific competence that organized your sense of who you are, has no purchase here. The institution does not care what you were. It cares only what you are, which is an inmate with a number, assigned to a bunk, accountable to a schedule. Researchers studying the psychological impact of incarceration have documented that this identity disruption, the loss of the external structures that organized the self, is one of the most significant sources of distress in the early period of incarceration, particularly for people whose pre-incarceration identity was strongly tied to professional role and status, medium security. For sentences that require it, or for infractions that occur in minimum security, the environment changes. The medium security facility has fences, has counts, multiple times daily, where every inmate is accounted for, has a population that is more diverse in offense type and background, and a social environment that is correspondingly more complex and more dangerous. For the person arriving from a privileged background, the medium security facility presents the social learning curve at its steepest. The racial and ethnic organization of the prison population, which in many facilities follows informal but powerful rules about who associates with whom, who eats where, and who can be approached for what, is not visible from the outside and is not explained upon arrival. You learn by observation, by listening more than speaking, by the specific discipline of not being conspicuous until you understand the environment well enough to navigate it. Former inmates consistently describe the first weeks in a medium security facility as a period of acute social intelligence, of learning rapidly and under pressure, a set of social rules that have no equivalent in the outside world. Violence in medium security is not constant, but it is present. It is a background reality that shapes behavior even when it is not occurring. The person who comes from an environment where physical conflict was not a feature of daily life, and for whom the prospect of physical confrontation carries a specific fear that goes beyond the physical, encounters here a kind of social pressure that no previous life experience has prepared them for, not necessarily directed at them, but present enough to be felt in every interaction, every decision about where to sit, where to walk, whom to speak to, and whom to avoid. The specific vigilance this requires is exhausting in a way that is difficult to communicate to someone who has not experienced it. You are never fully off guard, because the cost of being off guard, even once, can be significant. The financial reality of incarceration compounds everything else. The prison commissary, the system through which inmates purchase goods beyond what the institution provides, operates on a monetary economy funded by outside deposits from family or by wages earned from prison labor. Federal prison wages range from approximately 12 cents to 40 cents per hour. Commissary prices for food supplements, hygiene products, clothing items, phone minutes reflect a captive market with no competition. The person who managed a significant income before incarceration finds that the financial reality of prison life is organized around amounts of money that would have been invisible in their previous existence. A $5 deposit from family is significant. The ability to buy a pack of instant noodles from commissary is a material comfort. The specific psychological dislocation of having been accustomed to a level of material comfort that is now entirely inaccessible, of understanding, intellectually, that you once spent more on a single meal than your monthly prison wage, is a specific form of the status disruption that incarceration produces. Phone calls home, in the American prison system, are not free. They are priced at rates that have historically been significantly higher than standard telecommunications rates, a practice that has been the subject of ongoing regulatory attention, but has not been fully resolved. For the inmate with family on the outside, for the parent trying to maintain a relationship with children who are growing up without them present, the cost of a phone call is not a trivial administrative detail. It is a concrete barrier to the relationship that may be the most important thing they are trying to hold on to. Release. The sentence ends. The gate opens. And the person who walks out is not the person who walked in. Research on reentry, the transition from incarceration back to civilian life, documents that this transition is one of the highest risk periods in the entire arc of incarceration, not for the reasons most people assume. The practical challenges are significant. Many employers do not hire people with felony records. Many housing markets do not accept them. Professional licenses may have been revoked. The financial resources that existed before incarceration may have been depleted by legal fees and the costs of maintaining any financial obligations during the sentence. But the psychological challenge of reentry is often more profound than the practical one. The person who was incarcerated has spent months or years in an environment organized by total institutional control. Every decision made for them. Every movement scheduled. Every hour accounted for. The return to an environment that requires autonomous decision-making, where there is no schedule, no count, no one telling you where to be and when, can be, for people who have served long sentences, profoundly disorienting. This is not a failure of the individual. It is a documented consequence of the specific institutional environment of incarceration. The skills that organized civilian life, the management of time, the navigation of social complexity, the maintenance of professional relationships and financial obligations, were not being practiced during incarceration. They have atrophied, and the world that was left behind has not remained static. Children have grown. Relationships have changed. Industries have evolved. The specific competencies that organize the pre-incarceration career may no longer map to the same opportunities. The person who had everything before, who entered this process from the specific vantage point of a life that worked, faces a re-entry challenge that is different from, but not less significant than, the one facing someone who had less. Because the distance between what was and what is now is visible at every moment, not just in what has been lost materially, in who has been lost. The person who walked into the county jail that first day is not the same person who walked out. The institution changed them, not always for the worse. Some former inmates described the specific perspective that incarceration provides on what matters, on resilience, on the things that cannot be taken even when everything else can. But the change is real, and the work of integrating it, of building a life that accounts for what happened and where it goes from here, is the work that no sentence, however served, actually does for you. That part is yours. If understanding how institutions shape human experience, in the systems most people only encounter from a distance, matters to you, subscribe. No sensationalism, no easy conclusions. Just the documented reality, explained as clearly as the available evidence allows. Hit subscribe. There is one reality of US incarceration that the rank account above cannot fully capture. The way time moves inside. Outside, time is organized by events, by deadlines, appointments, seasons, the rhythm of a life that has things happening in it. Inside, time is organized by count, by meal, by lights out, by the specific, grinding repetition of days that resemble each other so closely that weeks collapse into a blur and months become indistinguishable. Former inmates consistently describe this relationship with time as one of the most difficult features of incarceration to explain to people who have not experienced it. Not that time passes slowly, though it often does. That time passes without the markers that normally make it feel real. A year can go by, and when you look back at it, you cannot point to any specific day that was meaningfully different from the ones surrounding it. For someone who came from a life organized by achievement, by the completion of projects, the reaching of milestones, the sense of forward movement that gives a professional life its structure, this temporal blankness is a specific form of deprivation. Time spent inside is not experienced as time building toward something. It is experienced as time passing. The distinction is not philosophical, it is felt daily. Research on the long-term psychological effects of incarceration has documented something that former inmates describe, and that criminologists have studied, the specific difficulty of reconnecting with a sense of forward time after release. The habit of taking life one day at a time, developed inside as a survival strategy, a way of managing the indeterminate future, does not immediately deactivate at the gate. Former inmates describe continuing, sometimes for years after release, to live in a truncated relationship with the future, to plan in short horizons, to resist the kind of long-term investment in career, in relationships, in financial stability that a future-oriented life requires, not because they don't want those things, because the internal clock that the institution reset toward the immediate, the manageable, the today, keeps running on institutional time long after the institution has released them. The sentence ends. The adjustment continues, for longer than anyone who hasn't been inside tends to expect.